Hi everybody, Armored Pants here, and I have another video for you, and this time we are going to have a look at the brand new Czechoslovakian line, which is part of the European line. It branches off at Tier 6. We're going to have a look at the Skoda T25, or that's it, Piet, as it would be in Czech. So welcome back to the channel, and I hope you're going to enjoy this line. It's definitely a new line and one that we've been waiting for. For me, this is kind of personally very interesting because, you know, I live in the Czech Republic. And obviously these are Czechoslovakian tanks. My sister-in-law is Slovak, my wife is Czech, my kids are Irish, and my nephew and niece are Slirish. And so it's really interesting for me. By the way, one thing you're going to notice about this tank when you play it is that there is a plethora of these things, a conglomeration of these things on the battlefield. Sometimes, I mean, some of the games I played, I only played a few games in today, some of them, there's 5 in each team. And normally the only time I see that many Skodas in one place when I go to the supermarket here in Prague, but they are fucking everywhere. And of course, one of the things about that is it's very difficult to get an idea of exactly how good or bad this tank is when there's so many of them on the same team, right? Because you don't get to see them face off against different types of tanks. And if you've got 5 of these in one team and 5 in another team, or 5 in one team and 4 in another team, and the fact that they're autoloaders means that you get very imbalanced games, because if, you know, 3 or 4 of these things target one tank, that tank is eliminated immediately, right? Because it's an autoloader. So you're going to experience that yourselves, but we're going to have a look at the tank in as much detail as we can now, give you as much information as possible. I'm using Arm Inspector here on WOT Inspector because it's gone from Blitzhanger. It was on Blitzhanger because I was looking at the stats in a couple of weeks ago, but it seems to be removed. Maybe it's been updated and it will return. So the first thing about this tank is, obviously it's a Skoda tank. Skoda is a surname in Czech, and it also is a word which means pity. For example, bohužel je to Skoda means unfortunately it's a pity. Or nemůžu, protože je to škoda, or I can't because it is a pity. And then there's Skoda peníze, which is sort of, you know, another common phrase in Czech. But anyway, peníze, by the way, is money, so it's kind of like pity money, something like that. So anyway, I digress. So this tank is unusual. It's Tier 6 medium based on the Tier 5 German tank, but of course that was based on the Czech blueprints after the German invasion of Czechoslovakia. It has a 75mm gun that the tank has in Tier 5, but it has an autoloader, right? And it has 3 shells, and it can do quite a lot of damage, burst damage, right? And you're going to see that in the gameplay. It has heat as its Pramo round, which is unusual for a Tier 6 medium. As we look here at the armor, and it has a PCR as its standard round. Now, the thing about this tank is, and unlike its Tier 5 equivalent, which has a bit of frontal armor, this doesn't really have any armor at all. And that is a bit of a problem when you consider it's at Tier 6, and you're going to be coming up against KV2s, and if you're up tiered, you're going to be coming up against SU-152s. Annihilators, smashers, and basically could be one-shotted by a smasher or a KV2 even, or definitely an SU-152. So you need to be pretty careful about that, right? The other thing about this tank is here, if we look at the modules, is that it has substantial ammo rack here on the side and at the back of the turret. And the yellow boxes here as we look at them, and that is not good when you consider the amount of big behemoth guns you're going to be coming up against. So you can see that that is an easy target to hit there on if you're firing a HE round at this thing. So be prepared to be ammo racked, particularly given that you have very little armor. And obviously, you know, the amount of armor you have is very much determines your ability to be ammo racked, because ammo rack penetration needs the shell to go through and hit the ammo rack. And if you have little armor there, it means that it's going to pen through to it more often than not. But the other thing you need to be aware about is from this tank is that it has a poor power to weight ratio and very poor traverse. So therefore it doesn't handle like a typical medium tank. Now if you've played the T25 in Tier 5, you're going to be familiar with its poor power to weight ratio. It accelerates very slowly, and its terrible traverse. It's very difficult to circle a death in it, very difficult to peek-a-boom, etc., unless you pre-aim the turret. So what you need to do is you're going to need to move the tracks in this along with the turret. And if you're doing peek-a-boom, what I'd suggest you do is that you pre-aim that turret before you peek-a-boom. So basically align it with the target, not come out and turn it, because it's very slow, right? So there are a couple of tips to counteract that. The other thing is that many of you won't have played an autoloader before because you may not have played those lines. So I'm going to put a link into playing autoloaders, a guide I have already done, because there's some very specific things you need to do, but one of which is keeping safe when you're reloading. And the other one is trying to do active things like, for example, capture a base or something like that when you're reloading, so that you can actually help your team even though you can't do some damage. So, but it's in the link, and I'm going to put it in. It's going to put that link in the description for you. Now, in terms of the tank itself, right? So, it has, as we can see here, 1.5 second reload in between the shells, right? And that allows you to do quite a bit of burst damage here, as we can see as I put it in here onto the other Skoda T25. And there's quite a lot of those knocking around, as we said, right? Now, depending on how you run either calibrated shells or gun rammer, you're going to have between 14 and 15 second reload, depending on equipment set, provisions, etc. So it's longish, but not that long. It's not prohibitively long. The great thing about the autoloader is that you can fire off the shells really quickly, as you can see there, and do quite a lot of damage. And then, as you're reloading, you can do something like my compatriot here is doing to the right, capturing the base. Or what I'm going to do is, if I'm downtime, I'm not going to be moving up here, so I'm going to reload while I'm looking for my next shots. You can see here the gun handling is good, and we're able to take out that VK. Sorry, I think I said earlier that the standard round is APCR. It's not. The standard round is AP. What I meant was you have no APCR. You've got heat instead, which I don't like. I always prefer having AP and APCR as my premium round. As we look here at the slow traverse and the slow, acceleration power to weight ratio of this tank, and actually need to be aware if that can really come a cropper, especially if you're an experienced medium tank player and expected to handle like a medium tank. It doesn't really, when it gets going, it's very fast, as you can see here, right? It gets around the map, but it takes time to get going. And then it doesn't turn, its turning arc axis, etc. is slow compared to other mediums. Its turret traverse is very slow as well. But as I said, if you've played a T25 Tier 5 German tank premium before, then you will know about that. If you haven't, then you need to adapt. You can see here I'm staying in cover while I reload, and here I'm being a bit sneaky. I'm letting one of my allies come down because I could be one-shot by that KV2, so I'm letting him draw their attention, fluff that shot. Otherwise, maybe I might have got a mastery game because I would have got an extra kill and extra XP for that, or maybe if I captured the base. In the end, it's second class mastery, but it's a decent demonstration of this tank in action, both its positive and negative attributes. And you can see there, with the burst damage and that, you can do quite a bit of damage in this tank. It's easy to do 2k plus damage, up to 3k is not a problem, which is pretty decent in a Tier 6 medium. And the autoloader obviously is a big contributing factor to that. But the things you need to be aware of are, its positive things are, as we look at the master gunner, sharpshooter, etc. Its positive things are that it has great burst damage, has decent gun accuracy. It's 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of elevation, so great gun alignment, decent gun handling, decent burst damage, good DPM obviously. It's a decent credit maker, as you can see there, almost 55,000 credits derived. But on the downside, it has a number of downsides, and we need to address those. And they are starting with the lack of armor, right? Then there's the poor power to weight ratio, so acceleration is very slow, poor traverse speed, which makes it not handle like most mediums, so you need to adapt for that. The fact that this lack of armor means it can be ammo racked It does have those predominant ammo racks as well. And of course, if you're up tiered, you're going to really struggle with that lack of armor, etc. So they're just things to be aware of. They don't make it a bad tank. It's not a bad tank at all, and it is fun to play. But just be aware of those, and if you are, then of course you will be able to have a much more enjoyable experience and a much more enjoyable gameplay. So guys, I hope you found that useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. And now I guess all remains for me to say is, as always, cheers Mush and pants off.